the rainbow shell. So we want to find out what happened during his journey. So we had 400 years to the future, and find his gravestone, which will reveal all. Because, well, first we're going to grab the speed tab, and then you can see here that in 634 AD he passed away. And so we pour the soda pop on his grave in memory of his adventures. And here we are. We get to speak to his ghost. And we're picking up right where we left off. We warp back. We were in 600 AD. He died in 634 AD. So he's sort of been waiting 34 years to, before he passed away, and now is a ghost for another 300 and whatever, 66 years to tell Chrono about this. I think the implication is that he passed away in the dungeon. But then he died in 634 AD, so maybe the portion in the Middle Ages actually takes place, in sometime in the 7th century rather than specifically in 600 AD. Or he lived for another 34 years after going to search for the rainbow shell. Either way, here we go. And now that we've talked to Toma, we can see the entrance to that cave has been revealed, the Giant's Claw. And this is pretty fun because the Giant's Claw is actually the Tyranno lair, which we went through earlier in the game in 65 million BC, when the Reptite leader Azala ruled from here. So this has been intact for 65 million years. It looks looking pretty good. Looking pretty good for its age. And just like the Tyranno lair, lightning magic is really good in this dungeon. It's part of Marl's storyline and subquest, but this is obviously more of a callback to that period of the game where we were in prehistory. And it's fun how it mixes together the dungeon, like the like caves, and then the actual Tyranno lair. Like the Tyranno lair has sort of been integrated into into the earth itself over all that time, and some of it's intact, but a lot of it's not. So these enemies are super irritating. I think they're actually strong against lightning, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and now they counterattack. And I do that every time I play through the game. I blast them with a, an area of effect, Lightning 2 spell. And every time they get healed, and every time I go through, 3 counterattacks. You'd think I'd learn, but no. No, it's not me. So as you can see, the battles during this playthrough are very easy for me. I'm playing a New Game Plus playthrough of Chrono Trigger. And so what that means is, if you've played pretty much any modern game with RPG mechanics, you probably know what New Game Plus is, but it sort of originated in Chrono Trigger, and it allows you to take your characters and items and equipment and spells and everything from a completed playthrough into a new playthrough. And I'm playing with a file that has maxed out character levels, all the best equipment and everything. So I'm just kind of melting through all the random battles. And one of the things that I really love about Chrono Trigger, and when I talk about this in Timeless, a history of Chrono Trigger, but I think that it's really great the way that Chrono Trigger changes depending on like how you're playing through it. A regular like playthrough, starting from like first level and stuff, is a really rewarding Japanese RPG. It has just the right amount of challenge. It has like it's not a hard game, but it's not an easy game. And it rewards creativity and in your party builds and stuff like that. Chrono Trigger on a New Game Plus run, and I think this is where it really shines, and why it's my favorite game of all time, why I've played through it a million times, is that as you get into New Game Plus runs, it almost turns into an adventure game, because the RPG mechanics stop really having an impact on the game itself or your experience playing the game. You're not worried about leveling up. You're not worried about who's in your party or maximizing, like how many ability points you're picking up through battle. And so you just get to focus on exploring the world, spending time in the various different, eras, playing around with party configurations so that you kind of get like just more variety in terms of who's on your team in any given cutscene. And once you start doing that, you find out all sorts of interesting content that you probably missed the first way through because of your party configuration or whatever. And I think it was really smart of them to do that. Yuji Horii, the creator of Dragon Quest, wanted Chrono Trigger to be a very, very easy game. Right off the bat, he wanted it to be approachable for anybody, whether they had experience with Japanese RPGs or not. He wanted them to be able to pick it up and not run into any roadblocks, which might have them, like quit the game in frustration. That changed over the course of development. And Chrono Trigger, again, it's not an easy game, but it's not not a super hard game either. It has a good difficulty, but I think you can see in the New Game Plus playthroughs kind of Horii's original vision for the game that was more streamlined, more focused on exploration, and am I going backwards? No. Yeah, I mean 2D, yes, pixel art, and just the graphical style, I think, used in so many of the games in the 90s. It was very interpretive. And so the artistry of it, I think, really has held up well, over the past 3 decades, in a way that, simple cartoons from the 30s still look beautiful because, the artistry is intact, and the level of abstraction just ages well versus kind of more realistic, graphics of the time. Like, I think you look at 16-bit era, the height of the 16-bit era versus, stuff that was going on the PlayStation or Saturn or N64, and like in hindsight, I think like there are exceptions, of course, but comparing something like Chrono Trigger to something like Quest 64, or even the high-end PlayStation RPGs, I think Chrono Trigger stands out as looking just as good as anything that came out on the PlayStation. And I mean, in fact, I think some of the best PlayStation games, the best looking PlayStation games, are the ones that leaned heavily on 2D graphics as well. Legend of Mana, Saga Frontier 2, Suikoden 2, like all of those I think are really beautiful games, and having pixel art graphics worked really well there. Squaresoft, in particular, at the end of the Super Nintendo's lifespan, was just on another level. I think Nintendo was doing similar work with games like Yoshi's Island, but you look at what Squaresoft was doing with Chrono Trigger and Treasure of the Rudris or Treasure Hunter G, Trials of Mana, like any of those games, like you play them now and it's just night and day. Like you even put them up against, PlayStation games like Beyond the Beyond or Suikoden or the first Suikoden line, like what they were doing on the Super Nintendo was just like it shouldn't have been. They shouldn't have been able to pull that off. Like you look at Final Fantasy IV, like one of the first Super Nintendo JRPGs, and you compare it against what was coming out at the end of the system's lifespan, and it's just like, to me, I don't think there's been a greater graphical leap within a single generation than there was during the 16-bit generation. The 8-bit generation is probably pretty close, though. There's some pretty incredible stuff at the end of like the NES's lifespan and the Master System and stuff. But I would still say the 16-bit generation probably tops it. This can be a pretty hard battle in a regular playthrough. It's gonna be not too hard this time around, though. I was just yesterday, day before, I was looking at actually Captain Midnight. That's a really good point as well. I think it goes without saying that Chrono Trigger's music is among the best the genre, in my opinion, the genre's ever seen. Like Mitsuda's output during this period was just incredible. But also there's a lot of personality and character from the sound design outside of just the music, from the sound effects in battle to some of the stuff they were doing, like with voice samples and stuff for oh my gosh, I can't remember his name, the guy at the Millennial Fair, the Laugh, which was reminiscent of like Kefka's Laugh. Just lots of like nice little tricks that were really pushing the Super Nintendo and setting it apart from other games at the same time, pushing that sound chip to the limit. But what was I saying? Yesterday, I think, I was just looking at some newly revealed Chrono Trigger concept art, which was really, really cool. It was just character designs, like the ones, that we're seeing right now. They're very familiar, but famously, Akira Toriyama delivered character designs without actually, like, showing what the back of the characters looked like. So all of his designs were just in front of the characters, and so this was like portrait art of the characters done by a different artist, potentially from the time of the PlayStation re-release when they were doing the anime cutscenes. But in any case, you get to see like Toriyama's style that kind of drawn out in more detail, and you get to see some of the characters from angles that I've never seen in concept art or development art before, which is cool. All right. Oh, too heavy for me to lift, so we have to go back to the castle. And this is a nice little quality of life feature coming up, which they used maybe twice in the game, I think, both in Marl-related quests. The Citadel early on when you're going to, or sorry, the Cathedral early on when you're going to try to save Marl. They fade to black and bring you back to the castle, so you don't have to leave the dungeon. Best platform for playing Chrono Trigger? There are lots of good choices. I like the Super Nintendo version if you have access to that through emulation or original hardware. I think it's perfectly great. I think the translation is fine. It does the job. It's warm. It's very Ted Woolsey-esque, and just like Final Fantasy VI, I think it's good. It's fun. It's enjoyable. My personal preference is the Nintendo DS remake or re-release. It adds a bunch of new features and items and stuff like that. But I also actually think that the translation in that one's better. Just more complete, less compromised, sort of by the conditions that prevailed over a lot of mid-90s Japanese RPG translation. Plus, the form factor is just really nice. It looks gorgeous on the Nintendo DS screen. And the bonus content is cool too. I would not play the PlayStation version, whether that's on the disc on original hardware or on your PSP, your PS3, or PS Vita. It's not good. Too many load times. And then there's the Android version and the Steam version, which I think are fine. They use the Nintendo DS translation, which is good. I think that the mobile version is pretty ugly in the way that all of Square Enix's mobile remakes are. In that they use ugly fonts and bad UI, bad UX, bad design. But it's playable. And then the Steam version is based on the mobile version, except that over time, because Square Enix had a lot of pushback about how bad the original Steam release was. Over time, they released several patches that really bring the game into a good place. And I think that the Steam version now is a perfectly acceptable way to play Chrono Trigger. I don't think it looks perfect. I think that there's, they could have done a few more things to really bring it over the top. But it's probably the most accessible way to play it outside of emulation or playing on your phone. But I don't care for playing on my phone. So this is a callback to one of the very early scenes in the game, the trial. Except this time the king is on trial for corruption. After Chrono and Marl and Luca came back from the past, they saved the Chancellor, and he put into effect more kind of strict laws and more of a law and order type rule in the kingdom. So that got Chrono thrown in jail, and now the Chancellor is taking advantage of that to kind of prosecute the king for having stolen the rainbow shell. Even though it's still just in the basement. And we're going to find out in a little while why he's doing that when we open that chest. Spoilers, it's a throwback to what happened in the cathedral. This is one of the longer subquests in the game, I would say. But we are reaching the end. Close to the end. At which point we get to pick some pretty great items. Steam version is 50% off right now. I think that's a steal. Like, it's a fantastic game. I've played through it dozens of times, and if you get even a one playthrough out of it at that price, like you're going to be very happy with that. One thing I think is like nice about these older 16-bit Japanese RPGs versus like the 32-bit ones is they should be easier to kind of remaster and re-release on platforms like Steam. The PlayStation versions, or the PlayStation era Final Fantasies, were also released on Steam and PS4 and Switch and all over the place. And they have some really great new features that speed up the game, or have built-in cheats if you just want to be able to blaze through it. And up-res character models, which look really good, but then like the background textures are just like really poorly up-res. They look awful. Whereas a game like Chrono Trigger, you should be able to just use nearest neighbor scaling to get really nice, sharp, clean scaling of the pixel art, or you should be able to then do that, take that, maybe apply some bilinear filtering and a scanline shader, and get like a really sharp looking version of Chrono Trigger. Of course, Square Enix didn't do that with a few of their re-releases, like Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy V. They use these really, really bad looking redrawn sprites, and they look horrible. And The though just look at the game was just ruined. Fortunately, Chrono Trigger they put a bit more thought and effort into, and not even effort, because I think like there's a lot of effort that goes into redrawing sprites, and there was obviously like intentional thought put into how they remade and redid the graphics for Final Fantasy VI. But I don't know that anyone really liked it. Yeah, there's lots of good integer scaling options that look nice, and I think that's probably how Chrono Trigger on Steam does its scaling, and it looks good. Back to also the PlayStation Final Fantasies, there's some really wonderful fan projects that kind of look to resolve the issues with the official ports. The one that I'm most familiar with is for Final Fantasy IX. It's called Moguri Mod, and it uses AI machine learning to upscale all the background textures, and really makes the whole game look just amazing. And I wrote a piece about that technique and that technology for Input Mag right near the end of last year. And it's just fascinating to see a community come around a technology and outdo official products from organizations, corporations that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and that kind of passion that goes into being able to do that. Moguri Mod is completely free as well. They can't really charge for it because then that can get them in some sticky copyright situations. But you just buy the base game on Steam and then apply a Moguri Mod, and it's amazing. It's gorgeous, and I wish we could get an experience like that on home consoles, or just like the built-in official version of the game. There's no reason that Square Enix shouldn't be looking at technology like that to be able to upscale backgrounds. This is one of my favorite scenes in the game. Chrono Trigger, one of the ways it stands out on the Super Nintendo is all of these like really gorgeous, super detailed, one-off backgrounds that just like they're amazing. And this is probably the best one in the game. And so you have this like gorgeous stained glass window that you can't help but be impressed by the first time you play through here. And I just love the idea of like Marl breaking through, shattering it and kind of literally breaking through the glass ceiling as she comes and confronts the Chancellor, who is actually, as we can see now, is actually Yakra. So the descendant of the first boss in the game that we fought however many hours ago. You can see Luca didn't do very much damage there. She, even in this New Game Plus playthrough, like she's max level, but her Wonder Shot, the weapon that she uses, does random damage basically. So it can do a ton of damage or it can do very little damage. I think I'm better off just sticking with Flare is probably the most efficient way to deal damage right now. Chrono is out of MP because I used it all up in the last battle and didn't bother healing. So this fight's turning into a bit more of a slog than usual. Yeah, the enemy not having a health bar. That's kind of a staple of older Japanese RPGs, and I think that like game design can handle like increased information and perfect information for the player, and I think there's a lot of reward in that as well. And I think that you can also have really kind of rewarding tension when you have enemies that you don't know how far along in the battle you are. You don't know, and you kind of have to trust your gut, or you have to kind of trust the information that you have, whether or not you should push forward offensively, whether you should kind of scale back, heal up. And that's something that I think is really kind of unique and fun about these older Japanese RPGs in particular. One of the games where I feel like has some of the best risk reward in terms of like understanding like the pace and momentum of the battles is Wild Arms on the original PlayStation. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you, why I have that impression, other than the fact that like I just always felt playing those games like I was always on the edge of like just getting defeated, and understanding when to push the attack was always just so satisfying when I got it right. So Marl is the princess of the Kingdom of Guardia, and she and her dad are sort of reconciling now. She always thought that her dad sort of abandoned her, but in reality, she finds out that he was, just kind of broken by his wife's death, just as much as Marl was broken by, losing her mom and stuff. So it's a sweet little moment between the two of them. All right, so we're going to head back down to the basement where Melchior, which is we now know one of the sages from Zeal, is working on the rainbow shell and is going to make us some pretty great items. Chrono's best sword, it's called Rainbow. And then I can either choose from 3 helmets, which would outfit my entire team, or a exponentially stronger prism dress, which I can give to any of the female characters on my team, but I only get one of them. So, at this point, it doesn't really matter. I have, all the equipment that I need. Usually I would take the helms, I guess, if I was doing a regular playthrough, because I think there's other... it doesn't... You can pick whatever you want. They're all good. You want a prism dress, you want a few prism dresses, really, prism helms and stuff. But it sort of depends on your party makeup, I guess. The prism dress is really strong. So now, I don't get the sword yet. What I need to do to get the sword is do another subquest, the Sunstone subquest, which he can then make an alloy material, which he uses to make a rainbow, which is Chrono's strongest sword. It's not only strong like attack, pure attack value wise, but it's also very strong because it has an 80% critical hit rate, which is very high. So Chrono starts doing a lot of damage just with his regular physical attack. And I think we could probably... Let's see which one we want to do. Do we want to do that one? The Sunstone? That seems like a pretty good one. We'll have time for one more subquest here, I think. And I think that would be a good one. Has to be done in the future. That's Robo's Special Stone. Okay. Ghost of a Lofty Night. That one takes... Yeah, we're almost through. We only really have 3 subquests left. So let's go get the Sunstone. And then next time around, that'll leave us Robo's quest and frogs, and then we'll we'll be able to kind of roll from there. So I'm gonna bring... Who do I want to bring on this? Let's bring let's do this. This party can do just a ton of damage. You have Luca for like kind of AoE like battles, and then you have Isla who can do a huge amount of damage to single targets, and Chrono is obviously just all around a good damage dealer. I wouldn't say that this is like the peak party in terms of dealing damage, but it's pretty close. So I always... This is where we bring the Sunstone. I need to actually find the Sunstone, though. And I am totally blanking right now about where I find it. But basically the idea is we get the Sunstone, and then we plunk it in that cave where it's bathed in sunlight for 65,000,001,000 years, and then we go back and get it. But of course it you know, things happen. Oh, I know what I need to do. I need to actually go get the sunstone. And it's in the future. That's right. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Actually, it doesn't really matter who you bring to this next battle. Because this boss, who's kind of funny, just game of roulette, basically. So I need to attack these fires, and each time I get the right one, so I have a 20% chance getting the right one. If I get the right one, then it just does a set amount of damage to the boss, Son of Sun. And if I get it wrong, he just counterattacks. During a regular playthrough, you can make this battle a lot easier by bringing armor that absorbs fire attacks. Oop. Isla right now has a piece of equipment on that gives her a high counterattack rate. I don't actually need to attack the main boss. You can't actually damage it. And so whenever it shuffles again, I don't know if there's like rhyme or reason to, you know, how it determines which one is the right one. But once it shuffles, then I just need to hit each of them over and over again until I find the right one. Flare does a lot of damage in a regular playthrough. It can be a big challenge. So again, that's why you want the equipment that reduces or absorbs fire damage. If you have something that absorbs fire damage, like the red mail, or the upgraded red armor, then you can you know, you can basically, you can't lose this battle. You can have one character that just you know, that just goes through and defeats Son of Sun without being able to be damaged at all. Okay, we're pretty close here. Son of Sun doesn't have very much health, so we'll just need to figure out probably once more which is the correct flame. Do you think a first-time player would need a guide to see all the game's content? No, probably not. You can't see, and like, it depends on what you expect when you say all the game's content. Like, depending on who's in your party, you're going to get different cutscenes, different dialogue during story moments. And you obviously can't see all of that in any given playthrough, but that doesn't matter either. I think that what you're going to want is to be able to, you know, play through multiple times to see that. And you'll get a full experience no matter who you use in your party. Side quests, I think there's only one side quest that you can miss permanently if you choose a certain dialogue option. Otherwise, you can't miss anything. The first half of the game, first 2/3 of the game is very linear, and it's almost impossible to miss anything in the game. And then once you're in the back half of the game, like, all content is just accessible at all times. So no, I don't think a guide is necessarily required. It's not like a game like Final Fantasy VI where, like, you know, you might want a guide so that you can find hidden espers or anything like that. The experience is fairly linear, and it's meant to be kind of open and approachable for players of all kind of levels of familiarity with the genre. Where am I? Okay, so we're leaving the Moonstone here, and then the idea is we pop into the future and pick it up once it's been energized by the sun. One of the nice things about Chrono Trigger is you spatially you appear in the same place in the future as you did in the past. It's kind of fun though, because you can see, like that island's drifted a little bit as it, as it would and as it should. So we're going to go pick up the Moonstone. That should be the Sunstone, but it's gone. So now we need to go find where it went. But fortunately, I know where it went. And I've always found this to be one of the kind of like sillier and funnier moments in the game. Chrono Trigger is great because, like a lot of Square's output at the time, it really understood how to leverage humor in its storytelling, and the idea here that you'll see in a moment, but basically, like, this mayor of this village has taken the Sunstone. He won't give it to me because him and his family are like super greedy. So you go back in time, you give his ancestor some beef jerky for free. So then she decides to teach her family how to be generous. So then, this current mayor just will just give me the Sunstone, which is, it's a fun little like lesson in morality, but it's also kind of goofy how, like you give them some beef jerky and then that changes the course of this family's history. But I mean, I guess, hey, it's the little things, right? Little moments in life that add up. I need to go buy beef jerky though. But I think it's in the future. One of the other things about Chrono Trigger, Captain Midnight, you were asking about being able to see all the content without a guide, is Chrono Trigger is also quite short compared to other, other similar games. I think some people might be surprised just across the bat how much shorter a lot of Super Nintendo RPGs are than the genre is kind of like given credit for. But Chrono Trigger in particular, like, I think, I did a fresh playthrough last year and it took me about 17 hours to do everything. This playthrough right now is going to take me about, 9 hours or so for a replay. While I'm talking about it the whole time. So, even if you don't see everything in a playthrough, you're also going to be, not spending a ton of time on the game as you play through it also. Having trouble remembering where to find the jerky. Yeah, I agree. Like, recently I've put in more than 100 hours into a few RPGs, Dragon Quest 11 and stuff like that. I put a Persona 5, and I get it. And obviously I spent that much time playing them. I had fun, but more and more my kind of tastes and just the amount of time and attention that I have to give to games like that are, it's not robust enough to be able to handle 100 hours of an RPG. on the regular basis. Yeah, the Dragon Quest series, I love Dragon Quest VIII. I should kind of lead with that. I think it's a fabulous game. Um, it can be a huge grind, and it's very long. Dragon Quest XI is very long. I would recommend that you take a look at some of the older games in the series. Dragon Quest 4, 5, and 6 in particular, I think are really lovely, and don't lean so heavily into like the overlong nature of the latter games in the series. You have something like basically starting with Dragon Quest 7, the games became a lot bigger and longer. And what is this guy? No. And so like I think if you look at the older ones, anywhere from 3 to 4, 5, and 6. 6 is kind of long. 3, 4, and 5. Try one of those. They're really good. Okay, why can't I remember where to get the jerky? Give me a sec, everybody. Okay. This is majorly embarrassing. I'm telling you. I should know this game like the back of my hand, but I just completely had a brain just a brain fart there about where to find it. But now I remember. I looked it up on my phone. Talking and playing, not my strong suit. I need to go to where is it? There it is. Okay, here we go. Aha. So I need to buy the jerky for about 10,000 gold. And then I need to go back into the past. Of course, I was flitting and flying around everywhere when it was just right across from the house where the sunstone was stolen and kept. But what I need to do is I need to go back here and I can actually sell it. So I bought it for 9,900 gold, and she'll buy it from me for 10,000. And I would, get a profit of 100 gold, but I can give it to her instead. And this is what kind of leads her to see the value in sharing and generosity, which then I go into the future 400 years, and her descendant is now more than happy to give me the sunstone. And then we'll go pop it back in the Sunkeep and then go to the future to get it, and then have Melchior turn it into the rainbow. And I guess this is Chrono's side quest. Most of the other side quests all are tied to a character, whether it's their storyline or not. This one doesn't really have a character tied to it very strongly, but the weapon you get is Chrono's weapon. So I guess it's his. Isla doesn't really have a side quest either. There we go. So I might just be extrapolating a bit too much about, each of the side quests lining up specifically with a certain character. But it's always kind of made sense to me that it falls in a place like that. Right, now we can see the screen is flashing because the sunstone has powered up with 65 million years worth of light. Why I've always liked how I put it 65 million years into the past, and then I go to the future and it's not there in 2300 AD, so I go back to 1000 AD, just 1300 years earlier, to restore it back to its place, but it's not powered up then. Like 64,997,000 whatever years isn't enough, but that extra 1300 years just really pushes it over the top. Yeah, so that's how you get Luca's best weapon. Sunshades are also really powerful in that they up the damage that you output. So you get some pretty sweet weapons from and items from this side quest that really kind of managed to up your damage. Wonder Shot's a good weapon for Luca, and then we're just about to go get Rainbow, which is Chrono's best sword in the game. And after that, we're going to call it, we're going to wrap up. All right, so here we go. Melchior is using the Rainbow Shell and the Sunstone to create a new alloy, which he uses to make Prism Specs, which is just like the Sunshades, but upgraded, so it like really ups your overall damage output for a character. And then he makes Rainbow, which is Chrono's best sword. There we go. So we've reinvigorated Melchior. He feels, like he's contributing again to the better good of humanity. And so that's been it's been the 10th episode of Let's Play Chrono Trigger. We have 2 more side quests left to do before we tackle the game's final dungeon. What passes for the game's final dungeon, the Black Omen. It's completely optional, but it's an excellent dungeon, and it is required to get like the best ending in the game. So we'll probably we might have 1 or 2 episodes. I thought maybe we'd get done in 1 episode, but we have 2 more subquests to finish, and the Black Omen itself is quite long, so we might end up having 2 more episodes, 1 more subquest filled episode, and then a final one to wrap up the final dungeon and beat the game. We're at 7 hours 17 minutes, which is right in line with what I was expecting. It usually takes me about 9 to 11 hours to beat a New Game Plus, so we're right on track for that. Thanks for joining me today. This has been the 10th episode of Let's Play Chrono Trigger. You can find this episode will be archived on my YouTube channel, and all the previous episodes in the series are also there. You can find that at youtube.com/AidenMoher. You can also find archived copies of my Late to the Party series, where I head to Twitter. I asked Twitter to, help me pick a game, an older retro game or Japanese RPG. I play it online. I stream it. I write about it in my newsletter. And you can read that right above me here in Astrolabe. It's a kind of a bi-weekly-ish newsletter about science fiction and fantasy, geekdom, writing, retro video games, and everything that I'm interested in and my readers are interested in. You can find it at astrolabe.aidenmoher.com. Completely free to sign up. That's a new home. I moved it off of its old host and found a new home for it. I think you're really going to like it. I appreciate your support here on Twitch, your support on Astrolabe, and I can't wait to wrap up Chrono Trigger over the next week or 2 with all of you. So thanks so much. You all have a great day. Okay, bye everyone.